Welcome to the Law Life podcast. Today's guest is the fabulous Latrice Burks-Palmerio. What's up, Latrice?
Hey, Shana, how's it going?
Going really well. I'm loving the blonde. Talk to me about this blonde.
Thank you. So my grandmother was like Tina Turner's like doppelganger, and she would travel. People would say, "Oh my goodness, will you sign this?" And she says, "Look, I'm a Christian. I can't lie. I'm not like, Tina Turner." But she's more blonde. And since the wedding, I got married in like September, and I wanted to like, thank you. I wanted to do something different. So ever since then, I've been Miss Blonde. I think it's a good contrast to my chocolate skin. So I get a lot.
It looks beautiful. You really pull it off very well. Looks gorgeous. So you are a former applicant of mine.
Yes.
I know that you have, a great story and you're doing a lot of great things. So let's kind of bring it back. Talk about your childhood. What was Latrice's childhood like? Where'd you grow up?
Originally, I am from Shaker Heights, Ohio. It's a suburb of Cleveland. So Cleveland is big and they have like different suburbs. I grew up in a very diverse, like neighborhood and schooling. I had Jewish friends, Italian friends, Asian friends, like literally like you name it, I had those friends. Growing up, they told us that we live in a bubble, that Shaker Heights is not like the rest of the world. I go on to college and I find that to be true.
In what way?
In what way? Like the rest of the world isn't as like integrated as where I grew up. So I feel like DEI wasn't a thing that I had to grow up like using that term. It was just, it was just.
What was the term you just used?
DEI, like diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Got it. Okay. Because you grew up around inclusion, so you didn't feel it as much.
Exactly.
So when you went to college, where did you go to college? Ohio State?
In Ohio, which is like a small liberal arts school called the College of Worcester. So it was like an hour and a half away from where I grew up.
And what was that like?
Much different because it was in like Southern Ohio and I saw Confederate flags places. I'm telling you, when I say like culture shock, it was a major culture shock.
Why didn't you run? Why didn't you leave? I mean, did you not have that option? I mean, I can't imagine what you felt like seeing a Confederate flag.
It was hard. It was, and I remember calling my mom and saying like, so she wanted me to go to like a bigger state school, but I knew I was law school bound because I wanted to be a lawyer since middle school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she wanted me to go to a bigger school. I wanted to take that like liberal arts approach because I thought it would increase my chances of getting into a great law school. But my mom, I remember calling her and say like, oh my God, like did I make a mistake? And she was like, well, you got to stick it out because you chose that school. And
she gave you the mama lesson.
And I know you know what that's about.
Oh yeah, I definitely do. So that was 4 years. What was that like in college for you then? Going to college, a non-inclusive town and school.
I felt, and I know I'm a trustee of my alma mater. So I speak to students, like it's a full circle moment, right?
Like in you. Mm-hmm.
And like speaking to students, they're still facing the same things I faced.
So what did you face?
Being called slurs walking down the street and like going to a restaurant off of campus and having that be like being looked at a certain way, like all of those things that I didn't grow up experiencing.
Wow. I feel like it's usually the flip, right? Because I grew up in a very Jewish community and it was very vanilla, very unilateral, right? It was like, it felt, and I always wanted friends from all different walks of life. And I was like craving it almost. So you had the flip experience and yeah, I'm sure it was rough. And then did you make friends that had your back?
Absolutely. And it was one of those things where I felt the need to be like a, like advocate on campus while also getting good grades. Like one of the reasons why I got into USC is because I slayed in college. I did well and I wrote a piece at
USC Law School.
That's right. I went to USC Law School. So it's
like, look at you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I felt like I had to like take on more than my other peers did. I had to be like, active and
you had to watch your back.
Yeah.
What was the amount? Do you remember statistics of the amount of Black students at the school?
It's under 10%, I think.
Quite low.
And I know they try to like increase diversity. A lot of students of color who do end up going leave. They would leave a toxic job that they don't feel comfortable in. Same thing.
Thank you for sharing that. You prevail through this instance of feeling adverse and feeling different, but you of course are a fighter, right? and always trekking forward. And then, of course, you have that mom support too. And then you decide, so you knew you wanted to be a lawyer, you said, since middle school. Did you know what type of lawyer you wanted to be? Or where'd the inspo come from in middle school?
I have a brother who was troublesome, in and out of trouble, started in school, and there is like the school to prison pipeline. Like there's like students that like struggle with like behavioral issues like my older brother does. Those people end up going straight to jail because like society doesn't know what to do with them. So I'm going to be like a prosecutor, to be the person in the room to say, okay, this person has, a history with this. Well, maybe we shouldn't give them, this harsh, sentence. Maybe we should give them this instead.
Rehabilitation options.
Absolutely. And I know like prosecutors have like discretion. So I wanted to use that to help people like my brother who needed a better fighting chance.
How is he doing now?
He's doing well. Thank you so much for asking. He has twins. He's like a family guy now. And here's the thing. Some people, it just takes them longer to like mature and grow up.
Totally.
And we grew up in the same house, same mom, same dad. There are three of us. I have a younger brother. And I was the only girl of three. So I used to get yelled at if I didn't get A's. And meanwhile, they both barely passed school.
I'm one of five, and I think my siblings are going to kick my you-know-what for saying this. I was pushed really hard. And they're all doing their thing, but I think like sometimes parents see it in the kid, and they know the kid to push, and they know the kid that maybe needs a little backing off. So that's interesting. All right. So you get into USC Law School. What did that feel like? That is an amazing law school. You get in and you didn't have to go anywhere first. You got in like right off the LSAT, right? Right after your fourth year.
Well, yeah, I actually applied to law school twice. I applied right when I was in college, but my parents passed away. My mother passed when I was spring break of my first year. And then my dad passed the summer going into junior year. So by the time I graduated, I had no parental support.
So sorry.
And I had to I took a gap year, and I worked at Munger, Tolles and Olson. I was a fellow and like a litigation intern.
Let's tell our listeners what that firm is. Is that a big law firm?
Yeah,
so
it's a big firm. They're ranked high. They're AM 100. They work on great cases. And I learned a lot from them as an intern and as a fellow. Like, I'm very grateful. And that actually brought me to California. I was the only fellow not from California. Everyone else was.
The job brought you to Cali.
The job and the fellowship.
Got it. Wait, losing both parents during college, your mom and your dad passed away within a year or two of each other?
While I was
during college.
And doing all the things.
How do you even get through that? I mean, when my mom passed away, I understand the perseverance side, excuse me, because you just do what you got to do. But then another parent. So who passed away first, your mom or your dad?
And it was very sudden. It was deep veins, like thrombosis. So a blood clot from her leg traveled to her heart.
Wow.
I was on spring break. I was home when it happened. I'm grateful to have been home when it happened. I don't know if I can live with myself if I wasn't there.
You would do what you had to do, but it would be hard. It's a blessing, gratitude that you had that. And then a year later, your father passes away.
Yeah. He got hurt on the job. He was like a RNA, and there was a patient with a history of violence and like violence that beat on him pretty bad, and he passed.
That's a lot of trauma.
For sure, and I persevered.
I just got to work through this and go.
But I feel like my message to any, listener who has any type of trauma is like, you can't bury it forever because it'll pop up in other arenas of your life.
Yes.
Celebrations might trigger something, and they do for me. Like, I got married, and like I didn't have my dad walk me down the aisle, and like that was hard. Feelings with that. So don't bury it. Go to therapy. I love therapy. Everyone should go to therapy.
Me too. Here's the thing. I feel like, everyone has a level of trauma up until like their childhood trauma, let's say all the way till 20 years old. And everyone has different levels of it. And then like you form relationships. A lot of people get married, they get engaged. And if you don't deal with that stuff by the time you're in these committed relationships, and definitely by the time that you have children, right?
Talk about it.
It comes so much into the relationship, and it can really impact the relationship.
Right.
It can make you depressed.
Yep.
It definitely can make you feel anxious. It can make you feel suffocated.
Right.
You have to be whole yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think there's millions for sure that are walking around with grief, with past traumas, with things that they have not made peace with. So for anyone listening, go to therapy. Talk to somebody, a good therapist, because there's some crappy therapists out there,
right?
But someone good and reputable that can really help you. So that is really, really important. And so eventually it came up. Did it come up during law school?
For sure. And there would be days where I just couldn't leave my bed. And it's like, I've wanted this for so long.
So you're pushed through college and then you get into law school and you're like, I don't feel right.
And then that's when I started therapy, Shana. And I've been in therapy ever since then. I think it was my first year.
Smart.
First semester or second semester. But I came to realize, okay, like I've been a trooper this whole time. It's okay for me. And it's about allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to say, all right, now I need help.
Yes. And also when you do, and I have a similar journey. And when you do that, the work doesn't stop. It never stops.
Exactly.
And because then new things come up, or then you change, or then something else happens, right? Like a new death or a new trauma that could, kind of come up. And you have to have the tools. And at that point, maybe you have the tools for some things, but not everything. So you have to keep working at it. So what was USC law like? Did you live on campus downtown LA?
Yeah, so I lived on campus for all 3 years. I loved USC. I definitely felt, because as someone who grew up like, I would say like lower middle class in Cleveland, we were kind of paycheck to paycheck, but we had our own house. We had cars, the whole thing. But I definitely saw that there was like me and a lot of my peers who like came from wealth. And I eventually began to like appreciate, and I told myself, okay, Latrice, like your kids are going to be like these kids that come, because I made a commitment to like work really hard so I can give my kids the life that I saw a lot of my peers have. So
got it. So it was motivating being at USC because, USC I'm a Trojan, so don't come down on me, Trojans, but it's the University of Spoiled Children. There is a lot of money in that school, right? A ton of money in that school going in and out. And so you definitely see the nicest cars, the nicest clothing, designer bags.
Right.
You don't come from that. You're looking around going like, okay, well, I'm no different than them. I'm going to graduate with the same degree and I'm going to do this. And that pushed you, that motivated you. So what was the inclusivity like? So more diverse, right?
More diverse, yeah.
How's the law school though?
I thought we were around like 10, maybe 10, 12%. Our classes were small. So there were about, I think like under 200. The numbers were okay.
Okay.
I felt great. I started this organization called the like Women of Color Collective. So me and like a bunch of like women of all different backgrounds formed this group.
Very cool. So law school, it sounds like law school was pretty smooth sailing for you for the most part, because it was a big thing where you realized I need to get into therapy. So you dealt with a lot of the mental tools that the previous childhood traumas and the college trauma had on you. And then you got through law school. Did you enjoy law school?
I had my favorite classes. Like I loved con law. I was a TA for this like pre-law class that I was paid, and I was a research assistant. I graduated with 2 jobs, my clerkship and my big firm gig. I was definitely underestimated, and some of my peers were shocked that I got a clerkship and they didn't.
Why would they be shocked?
Well, that and they didn't apply across the board like I did. I went to Connecticut to clerk, but then I had my big law job at McGuire Woods waiting for me back in LA. So I just cast a wide net, which is what I was advised, and which is what I would pass on to anyone listening to this. Like in law school, even if you feel like, even if you're told, you might not get this, you might not get that, still apply, because I was told I might not get my firm job and I might not get my clerkship, and I got them both. So.
Right. It's that self-doubt, right? That people, it's funny because other people make people feel that way, but you can't allow other people to make you feel that way.
Exactly.
That's where you got to have that confidence, that self-love to go, if there's a maybe here, I'm going for it. And I'm not going to listen to anybody. And so that definitely comes into the bar prep a lot.
Yeah.
Because there's previous tutors, parents, people always telling applicants, maybe this isn't the right career path. Maybe you should go elsewhere. And it's just so not true. It's unbelievably not true. Okay, so how was the bar exam? Let's talk about the bar exam. I want to spend some good time here.
For
So you
sure.
take the bar the first time. What did you do to prepare?
I used Barbary. I fell in line with all of my other peers and, McGuire Woods.
But that's understandable. So, sorry, not to cut you off, but like Barbary, I mean, USC has a pretty high passage rate, right? I would assume it's in the 70s at least.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
You go to bar, but it's not for everybody, Barbary.
Right.
So, we get at CA bar style applicants from all different schools, and there's always going to be an applicant in every single school, even the high tier schools, that does not pass. So that's where you really have to research and know what kind of bar prep maybe you should be going into. Of course, the law schools are just shoving Barbary down everyone's throat all the time. So you went to Barbary, and what was that experience like? And were you working at the same time?
So initially, no. So I took the bar 2 times. The first time I wasn't, it was the height of COVID, and I had moved to Connecticut. Another big part of the equation is I have documented learning disabilities. I have ADHD, and I have like double deficit dyslexia.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, because it's important to my narrative. When I applied for the first time, they did not give me the proper testing accommodations that I needed.
Why?
They just made up an excuse as to why, and I still have that like rejection later. So when I took that exam, I failed that exam by only 45 points, which is very close. And I remember when I spoke to you and like law professors, people who really had my back, they were like, that is so close that you should take it in February. And I was like, I don't know if my heart is in it. Like, this is a big blow. And I believe if I had the proper time, I would have finished my essays. There were several essays that I didn't finish. And learning from you and your course, you're like, if you don't finish that essay, you won't pass that essay. All these tips that I just didn't know. All these tips that Barbie didn't give me. I needed more tailorized help. And that's when I came to you, and you changed my life.
I changed your life. Wow. That is
just like you helped me get over this hurdle that I needed to get over to achieve one of my long, dreams.
Yeah. So what would you say, like, if we were to break it down to like the 3 things that you can tell listeners that for you really needed to change that you got from CA Bar Style? What really were you needing that clarity on to improve?
I definitely didn't do enough issue spotting. And I think when I was in law school, and I think you really build on this, one of my professors told me that the facts in the law are like puzzle pieces. It's like these facts trigger this issue, this fact, and you also, and I remember being in your course, and we would be on Zoom because it wasn't in person because we were in the height of COVID. But like you told us the importance of like issue spotting, and also major issues, giving counter arguments for those,
maximizing the point.
Also, I would say like the like multiple choice, like you really kind of like kept us on that, meaning that like that if you did well and on that section, you can make up for lost points on the essays. It's all about approach, and I didn't realize that the first time I took it.
The strategy behind the test.
It's all strategy, and I would say it's like 40% mental. So the last piece is like, don't doubt yourself, trust in your instructors. I trusted you, and you gave me a great pep talk. I remember I was in Chambers and I was working because I ended up having to work the like second time I took the exam. I had like reviewed it. I was getting in my mind like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I can't do this again. But you spoke to me and you're like, hey, Latrice, look, you are headed down this path and it's the wrong path. If you keep dwelling on that old exam, you are going to lose energy to focus on kicking ass, next time.
I remember where I was when I talked to you. I was in the car. I remember I had to pull over.
I'm telling you, Shana, like those are like, that memory that'll be a memory that'll stay with me for like the rest of my life. That was one of the most powerful pep talks that I had ever. And you were like, stop now and turn around because you are going the wrong way. Focus on that next exam. And it really, you like lit a flame in me. And like ever since then, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get it together. Shana believes in me. It was awesome.
That is unbelievably humbling. And, as I've been doing bar prep all these years, what I've realized a lot of things. But one of the main things I've realized is words are so powerful.
They are.
And whether I make a video and I get insecure and I think like, no one's going to listen to me. Like, what do I have to say? You just put it out there, right? But when I'm dealing one-on-one with an applicant, the tough love sometimes, right? And that was something that I had to really work on, because in the beginning of CA Bar Style, around 2010 when I started it around, I was very like coddling, right? And I never want to put anyone down because that's not my approach. But most applicants that went through law school, they're used to succeeding. And then here comes the California bar exam to go, just kidding, like you're not as smart as you think you are. But it's really not a level of intelligence at all. And so, everyone deals with failure differently. And some applicants really they can't move. It is like a form of grief because they've given it their all and they have this major loss. But I really do stress, and I love that you remember that, you can't keep this on your shoulder. You got to let it go and you got to move forward, because you're going to have hard days.
Yeah.
You know what happens? You have the hard day and then the applicant goes, I'm not going to pass again. They bring it right back to failing and not seeing that name on the pass list.
Right.
So that's where you got to really utilize that state of mind to go like, just because that happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen this time.
Exactly.
And so thank you for listening to those words. Words are powerful. Words matter. It inspires me to keep giving my pep talks and keep being real with applicants and not just sugarcoating the reality of the situation. So thank you for that. So you took the bar the second time. Now, I do want to address, I remember because we had a lot of coaching conversations. Of course, there was tutoring, but I remember a sequence of them. And I remember a day where you were having a really hard time with criminal procedure. I think it was Fourth Amendment, search and seizure.
I remember, if I recall correctly, it was either an essay or like a multiple choice question about cops. If a person runs like a stop sign, but the cop subjectively thinks that person has crack on them, I'm going to search them because the person ran that stop sign, that the cop has ammunition to search the car. And I remember reading that or something to that effect. And it ripped me out, Shana. And I remember
that was a trigger.
It was a trigger.
Was it something that your brother had dealt with? What was the trigger?
I think it was George Floyd. It was right after Floyd had passed.
Got it. Yes, that was right around that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was collective heightened concern. And then it's just this thought of police can take advantage of us. And I really do think that law might be flawed, but right now it is still binding law. And I remember you telling me that it is still binding law. You have to learn it for purposes of this exam. And guess what? That issue was on our actual exam that year.
And so for Black applicants, African-American applicants listening, I had never had this issue in bar prep, right? And so it was unique to me. So I really had to take a moment and say, how am I, as a white woman, gonna support Latrice here and be very careful to understand her feelings, which I'll never understand? And how am I going to really form some connection to get you to keep going and be able, because you had to get through that material, right? I mean, it's on the exam. And so, I don't recall my exact approach, but I think it was just to listen to you and really understand, and then just say, okay, I completely can understand how you would feel this way, but it is what it is. The law is like this, and we're just going to try your best to not attach emotion. And that does happen a lot on the bar exam, by the way, because whether it's abortion and constitutional law, whether it's voting rights, right, president, executive stuff, there are a lot of political and race relation issues that come up when you're learning law.
Right.
And so I always tell students, you've got they repealed abortion, and a lot of applicants in class, when I say that, there's a gasp, especially amongst the women.
Yeah.
And, I'm not here, this podcast may or may not one day turn political, but at the very least, we have to be human beings, and we have to understand, or I have to understand, that I have applicants from all different backgrounds and all different walks of life. And if they're feeling a certain way, that is their feelings, and I'm here to support them and help them through that. And so what I would say to others that are dealing with something like this, like you gotta understand that it's a normal feeling, and it's something that is definitely, you don't have to fight it, but you also have to do your best to not be emotional, which I know could be impossible in some instances, right? And because I've seen like constitutional law analysis, right, where it's very emotional, and I'm like, you're not here to, it's not your subjective feelings about the topic, it's more just the facts. But proud of you for getting through that. And do you have any tips for how you got through it? Like, how were you able to then separate the emotion and how you were reacting to reading that law and the examples and the practice to actually then going in and likely writing a passing essay because you passed the exam?
Well, first, I want to say thank you, because I actually still have that email from you. Your first response was, "I'm sorry," and I can appreciate that. You led with, empathy first, and that's what made the like big difference for me. Like, you weren't like, "Oh, tough it up." You acknowledged where I was coming from, and that meant the world to
Of
me.
course.
And here's the
Of
thing,
course.
like my husband is actually 3/4 Italian and 1/4 Jewish. But the one thing I can say about his like, half Jewish mother, Jewish Americans are great allies to Black people. And that
Yes.
goes back like hundreds of years since like the
Yes.
beginning. So
Yes, I wish that we would connect more like in the real world on
I
that
agree.
and understand that. When I was at USC, I wrote a paper on the similarities between Black women and Jewish women.
I
And
love
how,
that.
and there was a book on it. There was a book that, and I don't, it was like an Unruh Scholar thing that I did. And I remember because I'll never forget Tanya Cook, a Black woman who I became very close with, coming out of an Orthodox Jewish school where I had only white friends. We formed such a bond right away, and she became my best friend throughout all of my undergrad.
Wow.
But my point is that, yes, I think there are similarities. And I think what you said is so true. Like, you have to lead with empathy. And that is something that only you can do with that work, because most people, whether it's a race issue, a religion issue, it could just be a relationship issue. When someone shares their feelings, the innate response is, you shouldn't have that feeling, right? Like, you're not justified in having that feeling. But the truth is, if someone and Oprah talks about this, if someone has a feeling, that's their justification. It doesn't need to be explained,
Right.
right?
Right.
They're having that feeling. It's not for you to disagree. It's for you to acknowledge. And so I'm really happy that I was able to do that, and you were able to move forward with that support.
Yeah. But to answer your question, yeah, I remember keeping a journal that I still have that I call my like justice journal. And like I write down
No
laws
way.
that I want to change eventually. Like I think it is a bad law to allow like cops to operate off of like subjective hunches, right? Even if a person
A reasonable suspicion is what you're getting at. Like,
Yeah,
if you
for
see
sure.
somebody speeding, that you can stop, and if it raises to probable cause, then the cop can actually search the car or the person. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
like I wrote that down, and and then there was like the false imprisonment part of torts, right? That you can hold someone in a back room if you think that they're stealing until the cops come. Like I wrote all of that down. Like I don't think that's a good law. I want to change that.
Are we going to see Latrice in Congress?
I used to want to. Now Congress is too broken. Someone has
I
to
know.
fix it first, and then maybe
I agree. It's so much drama.
I won't do it.
Yeah, but I can see you in politics.
Thank you.
I can definitely see you in politics. So what is life like? So you passed the bar, obviously.
Yeah.
You took it the second time. You got it done. And what has life been like since then?
Life has been good. So I worked at McGuire Woods. I had the like big law experience. I'm currently at a boutique firm founded by a former federal judge. It's called Arson LLP. I've gotten cases trial ready. I've had some great experience.
What area of law are you practicing in?
We do like general litigation, so we'll be on either side of the V, right? We'll be plaintiff work, defense work. Currently working on a trial. Like we represent like a rich like real estate developer in LA.
But what happened to the prosecutor's goal?
I know. So here's the thing. USC is very expensive. So my goal is, Shana, is to like, hey, I want to take it out in private practice for a little bit,
Got it.
My husband's a filmmaker, so his, he's, working, trying to figure things out after the strike, and there's some major movement in that. I think eventually, eventually I want to use my degree to like serve my country and my community and make this world, this country, a better place for everybody. I'm in a bind. A lot of like mid-level lawyers, and I see some of my friends are like going in house or are still at firms, but I want to be able to like afford the like public service aspect. I really want to, but
got it. I know, but in reality, we live in Los Angeles. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, we live in Los Angeles, and between student loans and right, all the things that we have to pay for, it's not always easy, because I would have loved to maybe, be a prosecutor as well. But then, you got bills to pay, and right, you want to have a nice life. But I know you're going to get there. I have a feeling I'm going to see you in something like TV, politics, something. I'm feeling it. I see it. This has been a wonderful conversation, emotional conversation. Somehow these podcasts, these episodes I have always take this emotional turn, and and we talk about real things because life is real, right? And I think the biggest goal when I talk to former applicants is to put a face and a story behind the name of the applicant. Because a lot of times it's like we take the hardest bar in the country and we go through so much, but like, who are these people? Who are these applicants? And if you can inspire one person, which you definitely will today, you'll inspire many, 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 especially young African-American women and men that may think like, I can't do this. Like people were telling you, you may not get that. You may not get that.
Right.
To keep pushing and believing in themselves despite what they're going through. And then you add grief on top of it. I mean, 2 parents, like your story is definitely one of major perseverance and inspiration. And what would you say to wrap it all up? Like, where is your strength from? Where do you get your power from on a daily basis? Because you're a powerful woman.
One of the things that really helped me, like I had my father was a pastor. I just saw his like community love and just like love for like mankind of all kinds, right? Growing up, like good or bad news, my father would tell me, you are a Burks, you're smart, you're this, you're that. And even though he's been gone for years now, I can still hear his voice. And when, like whether it's good or bad news, I'll say, I'm a Burks, I'm a Burks. One of the reasons why I ended up keeping my, like married name, I ended up keeping Burks and like hyphenating, because I pumped so much identity into who I am because of my father. I had such a loving father. So it means a lot. And my mom was great too, but he was the one to like give me pep talks. And even though he's gone, I could still hear him.
You hear him. So basically bringing it back to the roots of the father.
Yeah.
That connectivity, that gives you your power, and you still hear him. And for anyone that's lost a loved one, they're always with you. And you can still hear them. And eventually, if you're just new to grief, eventually you can talk to them and have that comfort. Well, Latrice, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, challenging, inspiring, like every synonym in the book, really.
Wow.
You are a light of positivity, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future. Thank you so much for trusting CA Bar Style. I'm really looking forward to what you do in the future. Thanks for being on Law Life. I appreciate it a lot.
No problem. You really changed my life. You're one of my favorite people, Shana. I'm so grateful.
Right back at you. Back at you. You changed my life too. Love you, girl.
Love you.
All right. Have a beautiful day, and congratulations on your wedding. You guys look very in love. Very in love. I see all the photos. He looks like a really nice guy. He's lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's see.
All right, darling. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah, take care.
Go on with your blonde self.
See you later.
You've been listening to Law Life, a podcast about navigating law, life, and everything in between with host Shana Karpeles. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for episode updates. For more information on the show or preparing for the California bar exam, you can visit us on YouTube at CA Bar Style.